One night, a man was on his way home alone. Because he was tired from work and sleepy, he didn't focus until he bumped into a beautiful woman. As a result of the collision, now his car was destroyed and he was injured in the head. The man was so angry when he saw the woman who had looked fine. The frightened woman immediately ran away. The man didn't let her run away. He quickly ran after her, and luckily he managed to catch the woman. The woman fell with a frightened face. But the expression of fear immediately turned to the man. He didn't realize that the woman earlier was a rotting corpse. It turned out that the man had been coaxed into the woman's coffin. Unexpectedly, the man had died from the accident. This story tells of a man who always makes cakes for his daughter. His daughter likes the cakes made by her father, especially the father always makes different cakes with delicious taste. The happiness of the father is to see his daughter devour his homemade cake. One day, the two went to the supermarket to buy ingredients for a cake. Unexpectedly, there was a bus that was speeding and hit them. The woman was very sad to see her father's grave. Finally, she decided to go home. But she felt strange because there was still cake made by her father on the table. And in front of her appeared her father, who was still alive. Her father was seen crying while holding his homemade cake. It turned out that the one who died in the accident was not her father, but the woman herself. This story tells of a boy who is very close to his nanny. But he likes to prank his nanny by putting dead mice on the bed. But even though this child is very naughty, the nanny always loves and takes care of him. In that house, this boy was actually ignored by his parents. Because his father and mother are more affectionate and considerate to his newborn sister. Because he was always treated differently, the boy then killed his baby sister by drowning her in the bathtub. But when asked, he actually admitted that it was his nanny who killed his baby sister. The nanny was eventually arrested and taken to the police station. But the sad nanny finally decided to commit suicide. Years later, the little boy has now grown up and has a family. One day, suddenly two policemen came looking for him. He was later arrested on charges of assaulting his wife. In the end, he was imprisoned for something he didn't do. It turned out that it was his nanny's spirit who took revenge by possessing his wife. Two men were drinking at a bar. One night, a beautiful woman stumbled and bumped into them. Then the beautiful woman seduced one of the men and invited him to her house. The invitation made the other man jealous. He then followed the beautiful woman home, and he looked so happy. But he didn't know that she had the ability to change faces. Then the woman held her face, and strangely, her face had now turned into another beautiful woman. The sexy woman then went to the other guy and teased him to come back to her house too. They were completely unaware that the beautiful woman was a grandmother who could change faces. From the beginning, the grandmother had been eyeing the two men.
Graduation day arrived. A group of high school students celebrated it by staying 3 nights in the Wet Valley Water Park for fun. Lots of parties and youth excitement there. But one night, a mysterious man secretly placed 2 iron pieces in the middle of one of the water slides, and a terrible thing started to happen. The teenagers held a race on the 3rd day where each student raced to slide to be the fastest. But the teenagers were not aware that their bodies would be mutilated in the middle of the tube slide. The visitors in the swimming pool began to scream hysterically when they saw the bodies of the victims. The pool had now turned blood red and the fun day turned into a disaster. However, the culprit had slipped through the crowd, undetected. How can this mystery be solved? What is the real motive of the perpetrator?
One night, a man was looking out the window of his apartment. Unexpectedly, from behind the window in the opposite apartment, a woman looked back at him with a big smile, as if inviting him to stop by her apartment. The man immediately fell in love and was too happy with the invitation. Moreover, the woman looks beautiful with a sweet smile that asks him to visit her immediately. Without thinking, the man immediately rushed to the woman's apartment. It was getting late, and he finally arrived at the woman's room. He knocked slowly but found the door open by itself as if his presence had been expected. And sure enough, the woman he had seen earlier was in the room, still with the same wide smile. But instantly, the man's body was petrified with fear. It turned out that the woman he had seen earlier was not looking at him with a smile. But her neck was caught in a rope. It turns out she had just committed suicide. This story tells of a mother who is dying. Her son was about to go camping with his school friends. But suddenly, the mother got a bad feeling. Her son, who was already excited, immediately ran towards the waiting bus. Unexpectedly, the mother got out of bed and tried to prevent her son from going camping. His mother finally restrained her son and let the bus drive away, carrying his school friends. The child who his friends left was so angry. He then wanted to scold his mother. But when he arrived at his mother's room, he was so shocked to find his mother had died while his father was crying next to her. His mother died with a big smile. It turns out his mother's spirit prevented him from going camping because the bus they were traveling in had an accident and killed all of his classmates. This story tells of a man who received a call from his wife, as if his wife was very panicked and scared. His wife also asked him to come home from work immediately. Without thinking, the husband went home to meet his wife and his son. When he arrived at his apartment, the husband was shocked when he saw his wife sitting with her body shaking with fear. In front of her was a pudding that turned out to be filled with cockroaches. Realizing the ridiculous behavior of his wife, who called him home just because she was afraid of cockroaches, the husband was very angry. Full of emotion, he decided to return to his office, leaving his wife still terrified. But the wife's fear was not caused by cockroaches, but by a monster hiding under the table. The monster looked at her with a hungry look, with dozens of cockroaches crawling all over its body. This story tells about a man who meets a woman through a dating app. It turned out that both of them liked each other and decided to get married until they finally had a cute baby. The father was very happy with his son and always played with him. But when the baby laughs, it looks terrible sharp fangs. Not only fangs, but the baby can also make a horrible facial expression like an alien. This incident frightened his father. But as time went on, the baby's behavior became more and more terrible. When playing with his father, he can even pop out his eyes and remove his brain and organs. One night, the father decided to kill the demon child. But suddenly, something like an umbilical cord tugged at his hand. It turned out that the cord came from his wife's genitals. The husband was so sad because he had the heart to kill his biological child. And it turns out his wife is not an ordinary human. Now the husband was able to accept the condition of his wife and child, who were not normal human beings. This story tells about a boy who always gets violence from his drunken father. Almost every day, his father always beat him. The boy had an iron doll who always witnessed his father's crimes. One day, the father was violent again, until suddenly, the iron doll came to life and immediately killed the father. The boy was then locked up in prison. Years passed, now he has grown up and out of prison. He returned to his former home, which now looked destroyed and empty. But just then, he saw his iron doll, still lying in the same place for years. He was so sad to see the iron doll and immediately approached him. Unexpectedly, there was the corpse of a boy who had become a skeleton inside. It turned out to be his younger brother, who had a disability. All this time, their father had locked him in the iron doll. A horror story from Japan. It is said that there was a girl who was visiting her grandparents' house in the village. One day she was playing in the forest near the temple. Suddenly, she could hear a voice coming from behind the trees. In front of her, a very tall woman appeared. The girl immediately ran away in fear and told the incident to her grandmother. Her grandfather then called his son to pick up his granddaughter. It turns out that the figure she meets is Hachishakya-sama, a terrible female spirit who likes to kidnap children. Her grandmother said she should be locked in a room and she shouldn't open the door until sunrise. In the middle of the night, she heard her grandfather's voice asking her to open the door. Luckily she followed her grandmother's advice. And the woman's voice she had heard in the forest appeared again from behind the door. Sure enough, it wasn't her grandfather's voice who's been calling her, but Hachishakya-sama's. Luckily she survived until the next day. She immediately went home and never returned to the village. This story tells of a mother who always donates her blood through a machine. Years passed, now the child has grown up and the mother is old. One day, the old mother gave a box to her son. He left a message that the box would tell the true story of her sacrifice over the years. The son then received the box his mother gave him. Now the mother died peacefully in her bed. His mother was buried and he could only look down sadly because now he was living alone. When he opened the gift box his mother gave him, he was surprised to find several photos showing a child born with two heads. It turned out that the boy in the photo was him. His gaze fell on his mother's blood donation machine. With a trembling body, he tried to find out the secret inside the machine. And sure enough, there is his twin sister in it, who has been living by drinking their mother's blood for years. Now, the man continues his mother's struggle by giving blood to his twin sisters every day.